A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Glad you're with me on the program today. I am as delighted, not even more delighted, but I am as delighted that we are going to be talking with Rob Doar from the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. We have tried to connect with Rob a couple of times over the past week or so and just had some scheduling issues. But Rob will be with us here in just a moment or two, talking about some of the bills that have been introduced in the early days of this year's session, including a bill that just dropped yesterday that would have a major impact on the vast majority of gun owners across the state, vast majority of ranges across the state. And this is just one of several bad bills that have been introduced this session in the land of 10,000 lakes as anti-gun lawmakers try to turn it into the land of zero lawfully owned firearms. Take a look and a listen. Rob, thank you so much for joining me on the program. I'm really glad that we could connect today because it sounds like there is a lot of stuff to talk about in Minnesota right now.
Yeah, it's a little weird. At the beginning of session, the anti-gun Democrat leaders held a press conference saying that this wasn't going to be a controversial year, and yet we're seeing all sorts of very controversial stuff when it comes to lawful gun owners, peaceable gun owners, and Second Amendment rights. Yeah,
we're going to talk about the gun ban that has been introduced, some of the other bills. But right before we hit record here, you were telling me about a bill that just dropped yesterday. It sounds like this would have an impact on almost every gun owner who visits the range, who likes to enjoy, trap shooting, things of that nature. This is a direct attack on their right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, the bill dropped earlier. It was referred to committee, and this one's really interesting. Basically, it prohibits lead ammunition for hunting, and it prohibits the possession of lead ammunition, not even the hunting with lead ammunition, just the mere possession. So even if you have, let's say you have a personal protection firearm like a pistol, you wouldn't be able to have lead ammunition with that while hunting. But then ranges that receive what our state calls shooting facility sports grants, which ironically are actually funded from ammunition sales, ammunition companies like Federal here in Minnesota. If they receive grants, which is a large number of outdoor ranges and indoor ranges, that in order to receive those grants, that they have to prohibit lead ammunition from being used in their facilities.
Holy cow. I mean, and again, this just dropped yesterday, so I'm sure you've not had much of a chance to talk with a lot of range owners, but it seems to me like this is, either ranges are going to have to shut down, they're going to have to figure out how to do more with less, or again, the most common ammunition is going to be outlawed for use in these ranges. And again, for hunters and sportsmen, as well as trap shooters. This is absolutely insane. What is the supposed reason for this bill, Rob? What problem are we trying to solve here?
It was referred to the environmental committee. So I think that's their motivation behind it. That within the same bill is the banning of lead tackle and things like that. And while we know that there is some efficacy in restricting lead use over wildlife habitats, watersheds, wildlife habitats, because bottom feeders eat the lead, other animals eat those bottom feeders. There's no empirical evidence whatsoever of any population level impact on any species from upland game hunting, and certainly not from any ranges. And who's really going to be the most hurt by this are members of the public, like our high school trap shooting teams that use these ranges, that utilize these grants to help offset some of those costs and make it a low cost sport for high schoolers to engage in. Now, by eliminating their ability to get these grants, if they don't remove the use of lead on their property, essentially we're going to be seeing high school trap teams shut down. And I think that might be kind of the insidious underlying goal, is to kill off the next generation of people who actually care about their Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, and it's important for people to understand just how big high school trap shooting has become in Minnesota. The high school trap shooting league that is now nationwide really started in Minnesota, a little bit more than a decade ago. Last year, I think there were something like 7,500 participants in the state trap shooting championship, because it's an open competition. So, I mean, that shows you the level of involvement here. And I'm sure that that's absolutely horrifying to gun control activists, right? As you say, this is a safe sport. It's a sport where, kids get a chance to participate. Even if you're the 12th man on the team or the 12th woman on the team, you're still shooting. You're not riding the bench like you would be, playing basketball or baseball or football. And again, this exposes the next generation, as you say, to not only the Second Amendment, but how fun the shooting sports is, quite frankly.
Right.
And that's something we're not supposed to talk about. We're not supposed to talk about the enjoyable part of shooting, right? The recreational shooting that we do just for fun with family and friends, competitive shooting. They don't want that to exist. And if they can eradicate that, then that's one step closer to eradicating our right to keep and bear arms.
Absolutely. And these kids are really, really passionate about this sport. Our organization has had the opportunity to sponsor some of these teams. And then I've actually volunteered as a coach. And when they finally get it, when they're able to get 21, 22, 24 out of 25 on a round, the sheer joy on their face. And I'm talking young men, young women, people with disabilities. They are all competing against each other. There's no adaptations. There's no special limits where the females have to hit a certain amount and the males. No, it is literally a level playing field. And when you see a kid who maybe has a disability that prevents them from participating in hockey or football, when you see them being able to excel and compete at the same level as quote fully abled people, the joy on their face is just amazing. And that's what they're really going to be killing off with bills like this.
And the amazing thing is, like, the high school trap shooting program is not political. It's not that, there's no political component to this whatsoever, except perhaps now.
Right.
Because I hope that what we see are these, teams and these individuals who are competing start to contact their state representatives, start to contact their state senators, show up if this bill gets a hearing in committee, because we need to hear from these voices. And so, ironically, in an attempt to try to eradicate this sport, they may end up turning thousands of these high school athletes into activists defending their sport.
And we've already seen that. We've had members of high school trap teams join us in testifying in opposition to some of these bills, like universal background checks, that basically would have prohibited them from being able to, have one of the moms load up multiple firearms into her minivan and drive the kids over to go get pizza. That would have been prohibited under like some of these universal background checks bills. And these kids have testified and have actually shaped the influence of legislation through their testimony.
Well, I hope that we're going to hear more from them this session, as well as adult gun owners, because it sounds like, again, there are a number of threats here. So beyond this bill, tell me about the semi-auto ban that's been introduced in Minnesota this year.
Yeah, so there's two bills that have been introduced. One bans the transfer of semi-autos, and the other bans the possession of semi-autos. So in tandem, it essentially makes it entirely illegal to possess a semi-auto. The government has a buyback program, and I'm always confused how the government can buy back something that they never sold, but I digress. The Commissioner of Public Safety gets to set the price of the firearms that they are buying back. So whether you have a Ruger 1022 with a tactical stock or a high-end Noveske with all the bells and whistles, it's going to be valued at the same, and you have to turn it over, or you can register it with the government, and that database is open to the public.
What?
Yeah, they provided no privacy provisions within the bill. So by default, the data is public, and I guarantee you, within a week of this bill passing, we're going to see some anti-gun organization with some neighborhood tracker where you can find your neighbors that have registered assault weapons.
Good God, that is ridiculous. What is the status of these two bills right now? Are they moving?
So they've been referred to committee. We're only the second week into our legislative session right now, so things are a little bit early to see what's gaining traction. But we have been able to really effectively mobilize our members. And if you're listening, even if you're not in Minnesota, Minnesota, because of the nature of our politics, is always seen as the testing ground for all of these gun control proposals. We have pro-gun Democrats in rural areas, and they're always being pressured to vote for the common sense things. We have the ability through supporting our organization, or at least making your voice heard, we can put pressure on those Democrats to stop these bills in their tracks, which means that they stop gaining momentum in other states that could be pressured to try to find those Democrats that are, pro Second Amendment but support, common sense type things.
Yeah, and again, this is being billed as a session that is, modest proposals on firearms, right? We're taking a modest approach. I saw that headline yesterday, and I'm listening to what you're saying here, and it would be laughable if it weren't so serious, quite honestly. If we weren't talking about these, blatant infringements on a fundamental right. I've got to ask as well, Robin. We obviously saw this high-profile shooting made national headlines, Burnsville, Minnesota. Where 3 first responders, 2 police officers, and a paramedic were shot by a guy who apparently took his own life. Someone who was not legally eligible to own a firearm. I don't know if we know what type of firearm he used in this crime, but I'm already seeing anti-gun advocates, and I'm assuming anti-gun lawmakers as well, point to this crime committed by somebody who was not lawfully allowed to possess a firearm as reason to go after lawful gun owners. What kind of impact is the shooting having on the legislative session so far?
Well, so this tragedy was invoked at a press conference yesterday. Now, moving into this session, we knew that they had 2 priorities, 2 things that they wanted to get done this year. One was a safe storage mandate, which requires you to store firearms and ammunition separately, rendering them useless for self-defense in the home. And then the second is a mandatory reporting of lost and stolen firearms. They attempted, and even our governor tweeted this out, that had we passed a safe storage bill, that this tragedy may not have happened. And it just defies all logic, but it exposes their zeal to capitalize on the blood of innocent victims to push their agenda, no matter how irrelevant the policy proposal is. There is no rational analysis that says, had we had a law that required firearms to be stored safely, that a prohibited person that possessed multiple firearms that they were not allowed to possess and murdered law enforcement officers and a first respond and a paramedic, firefighter paramedic, that had we had a safe storage law, that would have prevented this. They're completely dancing in the blood of victims in order to push their agenda, and it's entirely shameful.
Do they think the people of Minnesota are morons? I mean, because you're right. I mean, not only is this exploiting a tragedy, but if you're reading the news, if you go beyond the headlines and you actually know the circumstance of what happened here, it's pretty apparent that a storage law would have had no impact. So, do they think the people of Minnesota are idiots, or do they just not care? I guess.
Yeah, I don't think they care. I think that that they have a formula. We've seen this done time and time again, where we must insert ineffective policy here to insert whatever the tragedy is for the children. I mean, that's a repeating dynamic that we see over and over again when these bills are coming up. They are shameless in their willingness to capitalize on tragedies to push irrelevant agendas.
Yeah. All right. Now, you said that we're in the early days of the session here. What's the best way for gun owners? We'll talk about Minnesota gun owners, but obviously those folks, who are outside of the state who want to pay attention. What's the best way for them to keep track of where these bills are, what bills are coming up for a hearing? How can they stay informed so that they can be engaged with their lawmakers this session?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of great resources on our website, which is gunowners.mn. Right there on the homepage, you can find a email sign up. At the very least, if you want to sign up just so I can keep you informed on what's going on. I don't spam you. We don't sell your information. All I care about is making sure that we have a very, very well-informed and engaged member base. And we've got members all over the country. It's not just limited to Minnesota. And then we also have bill trackers on our website, which we list off all of the pro Second Amendment bills, all the anti-gun bills that are working their way through the legislature. So you get kind of an at-a-glance look at where these specific policy proposals are. And if you are in Minnesota, we actually have an action center where all you need to do is put in your name and your address. Our system will automatically identify your elected officials and send them the message on your behalf and engage with them that way.
Okay. Well, listen, I hope that we can have you back as the session progresses. How long is this year's session, Rob?
It'll end in mid-May. So it's
Lord, that's a lot of time.
Session.
Yeah, relatively short, but a lot of time for them to do some damage.
A lot of time, yeah. And by about a month, by March 22nd, we'll have a good idea of which bills are moving and which ones are essentially dead for the year.
Okay. Now, I know you've been talking with a lot of lawmakers over the past couple of weeks. You don't have to name names because I'm not going to ask you to do that. But are you hearing any pushback from Democratic lawmakers to this extreme anti-Second Amendment agenda?
Yeah, we last year we were able to mobilize 76 of our 87 sheriffs in opposition to the safe storage bill. They said it's unenforceable, it's ridiculous. Especially the rural sheriff said, "Hey, we could be an hour away, driving 60 with, in code 3. We're not going to be able to be there." We know that there was bipartisan opposition to these bills last session when some of the gun control proposals were moving forward, and there remains bipartisan opposition to these bills. What I'm also worried about, though, is those moderate Republicans who might be drawn in to these proposals. And that's what scares me more than anything. I know that we've got Democrat votes and probably enough Democrat votes to kill these bills. I'm worried about the Republicans being pressured into these common sense measures.
Yeah. So if you're a gun owner in Minnesota and your representative or state senator has an R behind their name, don't just assume that means that they're going to stand with you in support of our Second Amendment, right? They need to be hearing from their constituents too.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, Rob, I certainly appreciate the update. I'm really glad we were able to connect and look forward to having you back on the program again very, very soon. Thank you for all that you and all of the folks at the Gun Owners Caucus are doing there in Minnesota.
Thanks, Cam. It's been great.
My thanks to Rob once again for joining us on the program. And yeah, we'll be talking with the folks from the Gun Owners Caucus in Minnesota. Probably check in again in a couple of weeks here and see where things are as we get a little bit closer to that filing deadline. Right now, let's turn our attention to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We will start there with a case out of Florida where court records reveal a troubling past for the shooting suspects at a Florida mall last week. This was in Palm Beach Gardens. There was a shooting, 2 suspects arrested, and the police chief in Palm Beach Gardens, Clinton Shannon, said that both of these suspects, well known to law enforcement. And in fact, one of the individuals has a arrest record going back. Well, actually, I guess they both have arrest records going back to their juvenile days. Chief Shannon said these are some very, very violent individuals that are walking freely among us. Devon Graham, Camarcio Mitchell, according to WFLX, have criminal histories that, again, go back to their childhoods and include plea deals, drop charges, as well as an acquittal. Graham right now has been charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. More charges could come soon. He is accused of shooting Mitchell in the middle of the mall back on Valentine's Day. Graham also apparently refused to show up for his first court appearance yesterday morning, so he's now being held on no bond, and his first appearance pushed back 30 days. According to the chief, Graham has previously been charged with 30 different felony offenses. He has 6 felony convictions, as well as just 1 incarceration. There's a problem right there, right? According to the chief, Graham's criminal record dates back to 2011, when he was 16 years old. Available court records, according to WFLX, available in Palm Beach County, start in 2013, when Graham was convicted of grand theft of a vehicle. He was sentenced to time served and walked free as soon as that conviction took place in 2014. 3 years later, 2017, he's arrested in connection with a non-deadly shooting near a Riviera Beach daycare. Charges included 2 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm, which prosecutors eventually dropped. The document said, although there was probable cause to make an arrest, the evidence is insufficient to support a prosecution. Mark Freeman, spokesman for the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office, says, well, one of the factors in that case is that we were unable to reach a victim. All right. But that is, listen, I mean, that's valid, right? If victims aren't cooperative, you can't put anybody on the stand, and you don't have a lot of physical evidence, that hurts these cases. And unfortunately, sometimes that will lead to charges being dismissed. The following year, Graham was arrested on drugs and weapons charges, was allowed to plead down to lesser charges, spent 30 days behind bars. In 2020, there was a forgery case. Graham received 3 years probation. He violated that probation in 2022 and spent another 20 days in jail. Mitchell, meanwhile, who was shot at the mall, allegedly by Graham, he's facing federal weapons charges for allegedly carrying a firearm as a convicted felon. According to the police chief, he thinks that it was Mitchell who actually started the confrontation with Graham, that the two didn't know each other. Mitchell is scheduled to be arraigned in federal court on March the 5th. Shannon, the police chief in Palm Beach Gardens, said some of the most notable crimes that he's been charged with: first-degree homicide in 2011, homicide in 2013, armed robbery, grand theft. Mitchell was just 15 when he was charged with murder in 2011. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of battery. Yeah, from murder down to battery. He was sentenced to probation, which he apparently violated in 2013 when he brought a gun to school. That led to a 28-month prison sentence. He was then charged with murder again in 2015, shortly after he got out of prison, but was found not guilty by a jury. Between 2018 and 2020, numerous felony charges filed against Mitchell, including grand theft auto, drug, weapons charges. But prosecutors dropped those felony charges down to misdemeanors. He was allowed to plead guilty. 2020 drug trafficking case sent Mitchell to prison for 4 years, well, on a 4-year sentence in 2021, but he got credit for more than a year served. He was required to serve a minimum of 3 years, so he apparently was not out of prison long before once again being involved in a violent crime. Yeah, there you go. So it's not Florida's constitutional carry or permitless carry law. It wasn't, law-abiding citizens blasting away at one another. Individuals with lengthy criminal histories. And unfortunately, not much time behind bars to show for any of those crimes that they were convicted or pled guilty to. Now, today's armed citizen story from Denison, Texas, where a homeowner shot an intruder after the stranger broke into his home armed with a hammer. Yeah. Broad daylight, too, by the way. This is about 4:30 Monday afternoon. Grayson County Sheriff's Department got a call from a homeowner saying, hey, I just had to shoot somebody who came into my home. When they arrived, they spoke with a homeowner who told them that a guy who he had never seen before, didn't know, came to his door and then managed to force his way inside the home while he was brandishing a hammer. The homeowner tried to get the guy to leave, but instead was attacked by the hammer-wielding home invader who struck him with the weapon. That, and only then, is when the homeowner drew his firearm and shot his attacker. At last report, the attacker airlifted to a hospital and is in critical condition. Police have not arrested anybody in connection with this. I guess they're waiting to see if the individual survives and gets out of the hospital. Case does remain under investigation, but based on the initial reports, this sounds like a very clear-cut case of self-defense. You are where you have a right to be in your own home. Somebody forcibly makes entry into that home and physically attacks you. Even if you did not have a castle doctrine law in place, as Texas does, that would still be a justified use of force to defend your life. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened there to the homeowner in Denison, Texas. Finally today, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, a St. Louis area man who helped his neighbor survive a house fire, actually pulled him out from the flames. Channel 4 in St. Louis reporting on what happened to Fred Ishman. He said, I had my hand up in the air. Next thing I know, I felt him grab my hand and I was on my way out the door. Ishman spent 2 months in the hospital recovering from the injuries that he received in this house fire. But if Mark Gordon, the Good Samaritan in question, had not been there to save his neighbor, it is likely that Ishman would have passed away from his injuries. Gordon said he was on fire. There were things around him spontaneously combusting because it was so hot. Gordon kicked down the door to Ishman's home ran into that burning house to rescue him. One St. Louis County police officer said the fire captain said this is the best fire rescue he's seen in 38 years. So Gordon, no thought to his own safety, is going through this, smoke-filled home. He says, I just kept walking and I felt a body. And I just grabbed the hand and I just snatched it and I pulled it all the way out to the door. Ishman said, I'd given up. He said, I couldn't go no further. He said, the heat had me, the smoke had me. I couldn't go anymore. I told the Lord, I'm on my way. And then I heard him beating on the door and it put a smile on me. St. Louis County Police hailing Gordon as a hero for pulling the 70-year-old man to safety from his home. Last month, he received the Citizen Award in January following the incident, which actually happened in May of last year. Gordon says, I don't think I would have done anything different. He said, I would hope that someone would do that for me. I help people. I think that's what my purpose in life is. Well, I got to say, I would like to think that if we were in a similar situation, we would all act as Mark Gordon did. But we all know that that's not the case. There are some folks who would have called 911. They would have waited outside for the first responders, but they would not have risked injury to themselves to try to save their neighbor. So in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Mark Gordon, we thank you for your life-saving good deed. Now, that is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. But don't forget to check out bearingarms.com throughout the day for all of the latest Second Amendment news and information from across the nation. And a preview coming up on Monday's show. We're going to be talking with Professor James Eric Dietz from Purdue University's Homeland Security Institute. We've been doing some fascinating research on armed teachers, armed school staff, as well as armed responses at churches. And this is information you probably won't see in the mainstream media, but we're going to let you know what Dr. Dietz and his team have uncovered. And it is, you'll know why the mainstream media is not interested in presenting this information, because it shows that, yes, armed citizens can have a beneficial impact. So we'll see you on Monday for that edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Check out bearingarms.com between now and then. And if you like what you see, I just ran right through that music, didn't I? I would encourage you to become a VIP or VIP Gold member at Bearing Arms. All you have to do, go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. I'm just going to start that music over again. Use the promo code SAVEAMERICA, and you can get 50% off your VIP or VIP Gold membership. As always, saying thanks for showing your support for the independent pro-Second Amendment journalism that we're doing. We're going to give you exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, because your support really does matter, and it truly does make a difference in a world where the mainstream media is not interested in presenting a pro-Second Amendment point of view. All right. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.